Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Scouching's 2022 NHL Draft Recap Series. Today we're looking at the Seattle Kraken. Now, the Kraken last year kind of confused me a little bit with their drafting because they drafted often quite productive players, but players that I was kind of going, okay, like you're drafting this guy over this guy, that's fine, but I mean, Matty Beniers is one of my favorite young players in the world right now, but it was a bit of a perplexing one the first go around for them. But this year, I mean, they did extremely well, I think. I mean, getting Shane Wright at 4, everyone's kind of talking about it. I wrote in McKean's that to me was one of my favorite picks of the draft. You know, look, I have problems with Shane Wright, and I think in my heart of hearts, him and Logan Cooley were a coin flip for me at 1 and 2. That's just, and I was clear about that before the draft. I get the logic, I suppose, of Yuri Slafkovsky going number 1. I also want to say I don't think people should kid themselves into thinking that Shane Wright was like not even wanted by these teams. Montreal interviewed him the day of the draft, and I think that was the day that they decided to go with Slafkovsky and maybe let him know in that meeting that was what's happening. And that doesn't, so Shane Wright very easily could have gone first overall in this year's draft. And second overall, the Devils did not want a center. They just did not want one. They tried to move the pick. They did not want a center. And so that they're just not going to draft Shane Wright if that's what they want. And at third overall, Arizona, I mean, I don't know, maybe they saw it the same way I did. Flip a coin between the two, and they prefer the American kid that has a bit more flash in his game. I don't know, but Shane Wright going to Seattle, I didn't see it coming before the draft, but I'm pleasantly surprised. Really creative playmaker, wicked shooter that I didn't see shoot the puck nearly enough this year. Really smart offensive tactical guy, sees the ice extraordinarily well. Obviously, I think there's lessons to learn. I think he might need to be sort of thrown to the wolves in the NHL a little bit to start the year and just see what he can do and see how he adapts to it, because I think that's sort of the ultimate test for him. But also, Seattle has a lot of runway here. They don't really need to compete right away, and I think Shane Wright with Matthew Beniers on the team, they could do some damage together. I think those are some interesting building blocks to have. And look, Seattle's had 2 drafts, and they got the guys I ranked number 1 in both years, and that's not so bad, and they did it without having first overall. So, in any case, the bangers keep coming. At 35th, they draft Jagger Firkus, who I had ranked 25th, much later than the average rank of 24 that I had on my list. Really, really dynamic, skilled offensive winger, really good problem solving under pressure, great shooter as well. Just like all these complicated little shooting situations, he can manage to get good looks at the net and good shots off, and even under pressure too. He's going to need to get some separation speed. He's going to need to get more resilient on the puck, because he kind of relied upon getting his stick free for a split second and getting that chance. But I think that there's a lot to like with Jagger Firkus, and I thought he was going to be one of the first players off the board in the second round, and he went relatively quickly on day 2, and he should have. At 49, they took Yanni Nyman, who I really liked coming into the season and just was kind of having a hard time with during the year. I see a big, skilled guy who has a really solid shot most of the time. I just see a really inconsistent player when it comes to his pace. He's physically impactful. He throws his weight around pretty well. And I did have him ranked a little later than 49th, but when I saw them call his name, I went, okay, like I could see his name being worth it in this range, especially when you looked at a lot of the guys that I liked in that range. A lot of them were smaller. And, they just drafted Jagger Firkus, and maybe they just wanted a bit of size as well, and Yanni Nyman stuck out to them in that area. So he's not just a big guy for the sake of being big. I really like sort of the straight line speed he can generate if he has some time to spool up, and the skill's pretty good. So it might have been a bit of a reach for me, but I'm not going to complain too much at 49 when he was ranked in my early third round and had been ranked higher on my list prior. And when you look at their whole draft class, we'll get to it, but yeah, I don't really complain that much. Nicholas Cukos going 58, that surprised me. I know I spoke to a couple of people, and they all said that teams really like him, and that there was a lot of interest in him, but based on how he could project in the future. So, I guess Seattle just got their goalie, and I mean, they don't really have a goaltending prospect that you can really put money behind right now. But Cukos is a good option, I suppose. He didn't really stop pucks super well this year, but there's a reputation there. Maybe there's whatever. But if there was any pick I was going to nitpick relative to the value or the slot that they picked him at, Coco would have been the one in for this team, but who knows? He's a goalie, and it's a good program in Karpat, so we'll see what happens. And then they drafted David Goyette at 61. I had him in my top 40. I was a little cooler on Goyette than some that I know. But again, it's similar. He's kind of like the CHL's Adam Ingram almost, like really sort of slippery skill, finding ways to move pucks around pressure really well, plays the game at his pace pretty well and has a good read of the ice. And there could be something there for sure with Goyette. I think that it's going to take a little while to sort of get him up to NHL pace and get him comfortable at that pace. But, the way he reads the game and distributes the puck, I think could easily translate in some way. And at 61, that's just a really smart pickup. Picking up Ty Nelson at 68, look, I think in terms of talent, and if he was sort of out there on the ice by himself and you just said, show off what you can do, kind of like Katniss Everdeen and all the other Hunger Games participants in the first movie, in the first book, I should say, Ty Nelson probably would show extraordinarily well. But then when he gets on the ice and actually plays a game of hockey with the North Bay Battalion, you wonder what type of hockey player you're looking at. I mean, he's a guy who really tries defensively, but doesn't really have the strength to play his style defensively yet. Unreal shot from the blue line. The guy literally split a puck in half and scored with one half of the puck, which is, I've never seen that before. The guy can absolutely rip it. I'll never forget at the Top Prospects game, the first two periods going, oh man, Ty Nelson is going to slip in the draft so hard. And then in the third period, they just gave him the puck 5 or 6 times towards the end of the game, and he was just rifling pucks at the net. None of them hit the net, but they really were ripping off of his stick. So refining that a little bit and sort of getting him a little more confident is going to be really important, because I saw he led my data set in uncontrolled offensive transitions based on the volume of time I had to track the player. I just kept going back to him over and over and over again and going, okay, when he uses skill and carries the puck and keeps his passing simple, the numbers are way better. When he's trying stretch passes and the dump and chase stuff and all of that, never worked. It just never worked. So we'll see what happens with Nelson, but I think that that's a great buy low. I think in terms of talent, he's a first rounder. But in terms of actual application on the ice, he's still a bit of a ways away. So I had him ranked in the early second round, and I thought 68 was a great pickup. Ben McDonald at 91, honestly, I did not get to see very much of him at all. There's very little tape. I can't really tell you much about Ben McDonald, so we'll see what happens. I've heard good things, I suppose, from people who do the prep school thing, but yeah, I haven't seen a ton. At 100, they took Tyson Jugnoth. I do like Tyson Jugnoth. I just wonder if there's enough there to project to higher levels. Really smart puck distributor and a good deceptive defenseman as well. Not super skilled, but he knows how to use his skill to his advantage and moved pucks really well for West Kelowna when I was watching him this year. At 100, sure, I can see why you would draft him. Maybe not exactly the type of player that I would target, but I like his distribution ability, and I like how he sees and reads the ice, and there's a nice blank slate to work with. You send him to college and you see what happens. At 123, they took Tucker Robertson. I went back and watched him. He produced extremely well this year. It's worth a shot at 123. I just don't think there's much there. He's resilient and has some good finishing ability. I just wasn't really blown away with his game that much. Found space in the offensive zone pretty well, was a quick finisher. At 123, whatever. You keep him in the OHL for another year or two and see what he does in the AHL afterwards. Like, there are worse players you could have drafted, and many worse players did get drafted, and Tucker Robertson is a fine option. Barrett Hall at 164, again, saw very limited moments of Barrett Hall. I wasn't really taken with his game, but again, it's 164th. Like, you send him to college or USHL, and you see what happens. Again, he's one of these guys where there wasn't much that I saw that I can really report as like a super positive thing, but there wasn't also a ton that I saw that was super negative. Not super productive in the prep school circuit. Just a guy to me, but who knows? We'll see what happens with him over the next little while. At 196, they took Kyle Jackson too, and Kyle Jackson is interesting. I didn't see much. I know he scored a lot this year for North Bay, but I really felt that he was just sort of on the receiving end of a lot of other better players, which pushed up his production. I just didn't see him as much of a pace pusher, much of a skill guy. Like, I watched him a few times because I always circle back on the guys that are undrafted and scoring a lot in the CHL. I liked Tucker Robertson more from what I remember, and Kyle Jackson I felt was just sort of a passenger more than anything. You send him back for another year in the OHL and you see where he ends up, but I wasn't particularly blown away. But the draft class as a whole, I mean, holy smokes. They might end up with 5 solid NHL players, right? Wright, Firkus, Nyman, Goyette, and Nelson, I think all could turn out to be pretty interesting NHL players at worst. Ty Nelson might need a bit of a rewiring job. David Goyette, I think, just needs some lessons to learn and to build on his footwork and his speed generation. Yanni Nyman, I think he could be at least a sort of solid third-line power winger. Jagger Firkus, I think, has second-line potential as an offensive winger. And if you get something out of a guy like Tyson Jugnoff, I wouldn't be surprised either. I kind of like bits and pieces of his game. So the Seattle Kraken, I mean, I don't think this will surprise any of you, but they rocket right up to the top of the leaderboard. They had a lot of picks. And I mean, the Arizona Coyotes should have taken notes from this. I really think that Seattle's going to end up with a much better draft class than Arizona did in retrospect. Arizona even had more capital than the Seattle Kraken did, and I still feel like, if Arizona had drafted Yanni Nyman and Jagger Firkus with those first round picks, and maybe not traded the picks to get Connor Geekie, they would have looked really good too. So Seattle getting those guys later is a no-brainer to me. And I think they played their cards extremely, extremely well at the draft, and probabilities are strong for some good ones to come out of the draft for them. So from one really strong drafting team to another, we're going to look at the Detroit Red Wings next. So Red Wings fans, please prep yourselves. We'll see where it goes. But see you tomorrow. We'll do the Detroit Red Wings, and it'll be a lot of fun. So thank you very much for joining me, and we'll see you tomorrow.